Customer obsession is the mantra of a number of successful innovators like Jeff Bezos and Satya Nadella of Microsoft. And the problem is that it's possible to become so hyper-focused on the customer that you lose sight of the entire ecosystem of partners who are necessary to deliver the value proposition to the customer. So that's the thesis and objective of Ron Adner's book, The Wide Lens, a new strategy for innovation. Adner is an award-winning professor of business administration and strategy at Dartmouth. So according to Adner, there are two distinct types of risks that exist within ecosystems, innovation ecosystems. The first one is co-innovation risk. And that is, you need to ask yourself the question, who needs to innovate with me? And he gives a good example of Philips Television. They pioneered HDTV, high definition television, at a time when HD cameras and transmission standards were not set yet. They had not proliferated. As a result, they were unable to deliver their value proposition to the customer because an HDTV, a high definition television that is showing images from old cameras, is really no different from a regular television. So it might be an objectively better product. It might be exactly what the customers want, yet the value proposition is not delivered because camera companies and transmission companies had not innovated to the same level as a television company. And so they exist in an ecosystem where everyone needs to innovate together. The second risk that Adner talks about is adoption risk. And you have to ask yourself the question, who needs to adopt my innovation? He gives the example of Michelin. Michelin makes tires, and they invented a new kind of tire, the run flat tire. And this tire can run without any loss in performance after it has been punctured. So if you take a nail and you puncture the tire, it'll still continue to run. And so they did a lot of market research and they asked consumers, and consumers said this is the kind of tire they want. They collaborated with vehicle companies, manufacturers, car manufacturers to create cars with these tires. They even licensed their product to other tire manufacturers. And it was exciting. They believed the world was about to be changed, but they didn't think of the fact, or the problem was that garages, those who actually fix tires, they didn't adopt the technology. And they didn't adopt the technology because you adopt something that makes money, and you have to have mass proliferation of the tires before garages choose to adopt the technology. And it's more expensive. You have to buy new equipment, expensive equipment to start fixing this kind of tires, and they're waiting for people to actually buy the tires. But the problem being is that when people bought the tires, they had no garages to fix the tires. And so the value proposition changed. You had a tire that once punctured, you could drive around. You wouldn't have to wait for a tow truck. You don't have to wait for at the side of the road. You can drive your car anyway when you're at your convenience to the garage to fix it. But now, if you have that kind of tire and you can drive it, but you drive to a garage and you can't find any garage who can fix the tire, you have a problem. You have to replace the entire tires. And so even though Michelin had innovated and had collaborated with so many people, there existed a segment in their ecosystem, garage operators, which needed to adopt the technology first before consumers could actually enjoy the value proposition. And so this is Adner's argument then is that we need to think beyond the simple value chain of our innovation. Is to adopt a blueprint instead of a value chain. To map actors beyond those who lie in the direct path to the consumer. You can think about, I have a new product. Who do I need to manufacture it? Who do I need to sell it? Who are the consumers? But you need to think beyond that, to think about people outside that chain, but in the ecosystem, who also need to innovate at the same time, and who also need to adopt your technology at the same time, who are not the consumer. And so you build an ecosystem like this. And this is to help you as an innovator. And I think that this wireless approach is relevant for healthcare, especially healthcare, because healthcare, the customer is not always the same as the user. And so people try to map the mantra of obsession with the customer into healthcare. But obsession with the patient is not the same as obsession with the customer, because there are oftentimes different kinds of customers. The customer may be the patient sometimes, but the customer can be an insurance company. It can be the government. It depends on the context, the place you are, the location, the country. And as we continue to reimagine healthcare, the customer can be many other actors. And so a customer obsession is not the same as a patient obsession, and it's not necessarily always as desirable. And healthcare has a much richer ecosystem of partners, if you ask me. Religious institutions, for instance, they're important for our understanding of the value and the ways in which we die, our conception of death and dying. Technology companies are building new electronic health records. They're building new technology for surgeries and changing the way we do surgeries. They're changing surgical equipment. They're politicians. They're elected every 4 years. They're making promises to the people, promises that might not be really good, but promises nonetheless. A politician might promise that, oh, we're going to build a hospital here. It might not be the best thing for a hospital to be there. So there are lots of partners in the ecosystem who are not the patients that an innovator in healthcare needs to manage. And so what an innovator has to do then is to identify all the players in this complex ecosystem with a value blueprint, identify their incentives and what is driving them and how you can satisfy them, and support all of them to change at the same time in a way that facilitates the adoption of and creation of value that is beneficial for the patient. And so I'll conclude with this haiku from Ron Adner himself. It says, if you succeeded, but your partners failed to change, you did not succeed. All right. Thanks for listening.